I'd yield to my friend, Mr. King.
I appreciate the judgment of the good judge from Texas, East Texas that might be, and I listening to this dialogue, and I thought I would come over here and engage in it, and I appreciate you recognizing me and yielding. The point that the gentleman from Texas makes that, I'll say it succinctly, corporations don't pay taxes. Corporations collect taxes that are imposed upon their bookkeeping system and aggregate the money from people and customers and flow that money to the federal government into the Treasury. That's how the corporations function. They're tax collectors for the government. But it's always the people that have to pay the taxes. It's always the customers that have to pay the taxes. And by the way, neither do LLCs pay taxes, neither do sole proprietorships or partnerships or any other business configuration that has customers out there pay taxes. They have to transfer those to their customers. They have to add it in and calculate it in. And I made payroll out for 28 years. I transferred a lot of those costs onto my customers. I had to. And if you didn't do that in the first place, you couldn't cash flow a business. You would never get it started in the first place. You would never get it to expand. You've got to have capital. And by the way, Adam Smith made this real clear. This is something I'd like to tell the people that will not respond to this charge. There are two components to the cost of everything we buy. It's the cost of capital and the cost of labor. And the capital cost is included in everything that we purchase. And so if we are going to have policy in this legislature that raises the cost of capital, which takes place easily when you see the tax increase. If you increase taxes on businesses that are doing business, that are investing, that are holding mortgage-backed securities, there's a capital cost to that. If you raise the cost of capital, then you're putting more burden on the economy. And the other component is labor. Adam Smith wrote it this way. The price of gold plummeted in Europe as the Spanish galleons began arriving on the continent from the New World. Not because Adam Smith didn't say that because they stole the gold from the Incas and the Aztecs. He described it as they lowered the cost of labor for getting that gold out of the ground and getting it into the marketplace. And that's how this economy works. And so, but corporations have been demonized by the people on the left side of the aisle because they don't understand that simple equation. The cost of capital, the cost of labor is the sum total of all the things that we buy. And then the businesses in the country have been enlisted by law to collect those taxes from people, impose them on people. And what do? We impose the acrimony on top of the businesses that are the tax collectors for the government. I'm with Louis Gohmert. Let's take the tax off of all these corporations. Let's take all the tax off of productivity, actually.
If the gentleman would yield,
I would. I think I like where you're going.
I'd like to add to the stunning Steve King from Iowa for his comment. He's absolutely true about the cost of a good is labor and capital, but the third component is the added cost of government. That's the third component that goes into an item, and that cost is getting exceedingly high. And I know that my colleague from Texas, Louis Gohmert, knows this very well, because if you look at the energy industry, at oil, gas production, the amount of money that companies make in profits is exceeded dramatically by the amount of money that the corporations pay in taxes to the government. People think that oil and gas companies have obscene profits, but they pay even more obscene levels of taxation. Literally, they've spent trillions of dollars that they've paid over to government in taxes while they've kept billions of dollars in profit. But out of that profit pool, that's where the oil and gas companies have had to take that money to invest back into the business so Americans can enjoy more energy. I'm so pleased about the positive solution that's been offered by one of our colleagues, John Shadegg, and also Mr. Bishop, and also Senator Ritter, and it is the no cost to the taxpayer stimulus bill that says very simply, let's open up and legalize all form of energy production all across the United States. Wind, solar, biofuel, oil, gas, oil, all of them. Let's open all of them up. In fact, I say hamsters running on cages. No matter what it is, let's make sure we legalize the source of energy, and that is zero cost to the taxpayer. It relieves the American people's burden on dependable gasoline at affordable prices. Let's do that. I know I was absolutely astounded. Senator Obama, during the campaign, and I'll yield back after this quote. This is a quote from our now president. He said during the course of the campaign. What I've said is that we would put a cap and trade system in place that is as aggressive, if not more aggressive, than anybody else is out there. So if somebody wants to build a coal-powered plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they're going to be charged a huge sum for all that greenhouse gas that's being emitted. He's admitting that his plan will bankrupt coal companies. When I was asked earlier about the issue of coal, under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. That's the future that the American people have to look forward to, and I think that's audacious. I yield back.
If the gentlelady would yield,
I would yield to my friend from Iowa.
I thank the gentleman. When you describe this cap and trade tax that's on everything, I'd ask, Mr. Speaker, that we illuminate this for the American people. Think if America were a continent unto itself. What if we were a planet unto ourselves? Would we manage ourselves this way? And I would say no. Because we're wasting all kinds of resources. We're wasting labor, we're wasting capital, we're not even using sound science. If we were a planet unto ourselves, but we have to compete with the rest of the planet. So this cap and trade proposal ties our hands, ties our legs, we're like Gulliver tied up by the Lilliputians with the cap and trade legislation that looks like it's coming down the pike, which will immobilize America's economy while India's and China's are growing. And not only are they growing, but they're emitting the CO2 gas and greenhouse gases at an accelerating rate. And so our little piece of this pie that we could possibly affect is so minimal a century from now that it really can't be measured by science. Sound science doesn't support this. Sound economics doesn't support this. And there are many better solutions, even if it was a prediction that could be made accurately. I yield, gentlemen.
Well, I thank Mr. King and I thank Ms. Bachmann. But it's such a great point about energy. We have been blessed in totality with more natural resources in the United States of America, I think, than any other country. It's just been fabulous. And yet we continue week after week, month after month, with the Democratic majority to continue to put more of our natural resources off limits. And one of the things some of us have been advocating, and I've got my staff working on a bill we talked about yesterday, that would be along the lines and in conjunction with our friend Mr. Shattuck, with Senator Bitter. But we all agree. We want all of the above energy. Use it all. But make sure we protect the environment, and that can be done. But open up the OCS to drilling. Put litigation on a fast track so they can't tie it up for 10 or 20 years and just keep repeatedly bringing them to court. But let's go use it if it's legal, if it's proper, and it will be if it's done right. And then take, now, something that had been negotiated before that could be done, the federal royalty that could be obtained by leasing the OCS would be more than traditionally a property owner gets from leasing their land to produce oil or gas. Traditionally, that's been 1/8. 1/8 royalty is what the owner normally got. We could get at least 3/16. We could split it with the states. We got states coming up here like California saying, please give us some money. I'm so proud they worked on their budget. They still need money. You got all kinds of money sitting in the vault, sitting in the bank right off your coast. Use what you got. And if it's solely in the state's territory, it's yours. If it's out beyond that and in federal territory, we'll split the money with you. And then my feeling is, and this is what I've talked to the staff about having a bill, we'll take half of the federal part of that, because we should share it with the states, but then our half, take half of that and devote it completely to research for alternative fuels. You don't have to tax anybody else. You don't have to add more cost to the already hardworking people that are paying to sustain this unwieldy government. But you could fund our own alternative research so that as things run out, we've got it. And it's really beginning to appear very disingenuous this stuff about the global warming, and that's why we're hearing no more global warming. They're not using that term. They're using climate change. Climate change happens 4 times a year. You know, it's the seasons.
If the gentleman would yield in Minnesota, that's true.
And I yield to the lady from Minnesota.
Thank you. I think we see 2 separate agendas at work here. The American people want low-cost energy that's dependable. We need that, not only just individuals, but also businesses. We need low-cost, dependable energy. But the Obama administration has taken a very different view on energy. They have, the then candidate Obama said he wants high-cost energy. Why? Because he wants to force the American people to have to pay the carbon tax that's about to come down the pike. We wouldn't need this terrible carbon tax that will completely damage our economy, especially in this time of recession, if the Obama administration wasn't addicted to spending. Because they're so addicted at these high levels of spending, President Obama, in his State of the Union address, said what he wants to do with that money. He wants socialized medicine. Is that what the American people want? The American people aren't crying out for socialized medicine, but that's what President Obama wants to give to the American people. Not only that, in his State of the Union address, he said that his vision for America is that government's hand would be in the hospital room of a brand new baby with a brand new mother. He wants from cradle to career the federal government's hand on the life of that child. I don't know about you, but the people in the 6th Congressional District of Minnesota, moms and dads want to have one of the parents at home with that baby to be able to love that child, raise that child. They don't want to send that little baby off to a government daycare center from the day that baby is born. That is President Obama's vision for child rearing, that the federal government would be involved in the cradle stages of a child's life. That's what massive spending demands, a way of taxation. This cap and trade isn't going to solve our energy problem. It will add to our energy problem because, again, it's going to take out of the pockets of the middle class of this country to put into the pocket of the federal government. I yield back.
Gentleman.
Thank you. I yield my friend from Iowa.
I thank the gentleman, and I would add to this. I take it back to a big picture, and that is this is about freedom. It's about preserving the freedom we have, defending the freedom we have, and in fact, we should be expanding the freedom that we have. Our freedom has diminished generation by generation since the founders established this country, and when you move to the left, it always includes an increase in taxes, an increase in government interference in every aspect of our lives, from raising our families to micromanaging energy to sticking their fingers into education, every aspect of our lives. So when you expand the role of government, you expand also the taxation and you diminish the freedom. And whether you do it insidiously by saying, I'm going to take your child now at age 3 or 2 or 1 as opposed to 5 or 6 as it used to be, or whether you do it in a blatant way by saying, we're going to impose this draconian regime on everybody in America and we're going to confiscate your income, whether you make the point that this point that's been made by this administration, and not quite in so many words, that is this: you're really not entitled, this is this administration and this majority, you're not really entitled to the money you earn in their view, but the people that claim they have a need are entitled to the money that you earn. That's the philosophical divide that's been turned. When you go to the left, you give up freedom, it's diminished. When you move policy to the right, you expand freedom and it's enhanced. We need to be about expanding everyone's freedom in this country. That's the foundation of America, and that's where our vitality comes from. That's why we are the unchallenged greatest nation in the world, because our vitality comes from our freedoms. Acts that diminish our vitality and handicap us. And I'd yield back to the gentleman from Texas. Thank him for his indulgence.
And I appreciate